Session is hereby called to order. The chair requests the Honorable Member of Parliament, Sheikh Abdul Wahab Pak, to lead the chamber in the opening prayer.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وصحبه أجمعين اللهم إنا سمعنا منادي ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا ربنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم الله نسألك من كل خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونستعيذ بك من كل شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ربنا افرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا في هذا المقام إلا غفرته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا حاجة من حوائجنا إلا عنتنا على قضاء ربنا وصلى الله وسلم على آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Please remain standing for the Philippine National Anthem and the Bangsamoro Hymn.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, labas ng sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinilang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong bangaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iinit, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang ay di magtitingin. Lumang ang araw ng warhabing pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya na pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Simula noon hanggang ngayon,
Secretariat is directed to proceed with the roll call.
The members of the BTA Parliament, the Honorables Abbas Ahmad, Abbas Haron,
Present.
Abbas Surkanain, Abbas Basit Sarip,
Present.
Abu Mujib, Adyong Joe Rahman Nalonto,
Present.
Ahang Abdullah, Alamia Liza,
Present.
Alauddin Faiz, Ali Ibrahim, Ali Lanang Jr., Ali Edi Mapag, Alil Cesar, Ambuluto Suarto, Ampatuan Baintan, Anayatin Susana, Asmawil Muslima, Balindong Ali Pangalian, Bara Hamid Amidudu,
Present.
Basman Anna Tarhata, Burahan Abraham,
Present.
Present po. Present po.
Dandamon Latif Maysara,
Present.
Diamla Musa, Dipatuan Saprula,
Present.
Ibrahim
Present.
Mahod, Ismail Haji Abdullah Aziz,
Present.
Gayak Abdullah,
Present.
Gere Edward, Hasim Abdullah,
Present.
Hasan Natinin, Iqbal Muager, Ismail Rasul, Jajuri Raisa, Jakilan Muslimin,
Present.
Jikiri Al-Bakil, Taron Bainon, Lidasan Dato Mussolini, Loong Don Mustafa, Lorena Jose Ribani, Makako Abdurauf, Makapaar Abdullah, Makaraya Jamel,
Present.
Makasalong Marjani, Manguda Dato Kadafe, Mantawil Malik, Mastura Dato Tokaw, Mastura City Shahara, Mawali Lamin Bahar, Middimbang Dato Midpantaw, Mitmog Rasul, Mujahid Abdul Muhmin,
Present.
Munoz Hussein, Oranon Suaid, Pakasa Mabayda, Pak Abdul Wahab, Pangandaman Nabila Margarita,
Present.
Ramos Jamila, Rimbang Sultan Edrisa Nasser,
Sir, present.
Sakar Modayaw, Salenda Said, Sali Al-Said, Saliga Romeo, Salik Ali, Sangki Ali, Sani Punduman,
Present.
Satar Al-Sad, Sema Omar Yasser, Sema Romeo, Sheikh Said, Silongan Aida,
Present.
Sulaiman Ali, Tago Paisalin,
Present.
Tan Nabil, Uja Sahi, Usman Asfar, Jacob Muhammad, UAK Narciso.
Mr. Speaker, 26 members inside the plenary hall and 28 members joining via Zoom. for a total of 54 members of the Parliament responded to the call. The presence of a quorum is hereby certified.
With 54 members responded to the roll call, constituting a quorum, certified by the Secretary General, Bangsamoro Parliament will now proceed with the conduct of its official business. Now recognize the Honorable Member of Parliament, Majority Leader, Attorney Lanan Ali Jr. Proceed, Majority.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Speaker Ali Pangalian Balindong, Honorable Deputy Speaker Ziaur Rahman Adjong, Honorable members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, members of Secretariat, visitors, guests, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 6, reading and approval of journal of the previous session. I move, Mr. Speaker, to dispense with the reading of journal number 92 of February 23, 2022 session, and I further move for the approval of the same.
There's a motion to dispense with the journal of the previous session and further move that we have adopted. Subject to style, it has been seconded. No objection. Motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, before we proceed, Mr. Speaker, I move to amend the order of business to include two items. Number one, on the second stage of bill, to include the bill related to Kapay Hospital, District Hospital, because it was deferred yesterday. And number two, to include in unfinished business the resolution related to Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. So I move.
So there's a motion to amend the order of business by inclusion to reintroduce Parliament Bill number 172 under the second stage of bills, and as well as PR number 678 under unfinished business, which was yesterday discussed under the period of debate and interpellation. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the order of business is hereby adopted with the inclusion of these two items.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 6, resolutions. May we request the Secretary to read the first proposed resolution for today's session, including the title, the number, and the authors.
Secretary General is so requested.
Proposed resolution number 440. Resolution requiring the Bank's Economic Development Council to submit to the BTA Parliament yearly consolidated performance report of the interim cabinet and other offices of the Bangsamoro government effective FY 2020. The principal author is MP Bayintaneang Patuan and the co-author is MP Bahar S. Mawalin.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Rules.
There's a motion that PR referred to the Committee on Rules. It has been seconded. Any hearing none, PR 440 is hereby referred to the Committee on Rules.
Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General so requested.
Proposed resolution number 549. Resolution directing the Bangsamoro Economic Development Council through the Bangsamoro Planning and Development Authority to formulate the socio-economic profile of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The principal author is MP Bayintaneang Patuan and the co-authors are MPs Liza M. Alamia, Amil Bahar S. Mawalil, Rasol Y. Mitmug Jr., Suharto M. Ambuludto, Don Mustafa Eloong, and Rasul E. Ismail.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Rules.
There's a motion that PR 549 be referred to the Committee on Rules. It has been seconded. Any objection? PR 5 should be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General so requested.
Proposed resolution number 688. Resolution commending and congratulating PMA Gail Roslin, a graduate of Notre Dame University, for successfully attaining the top 9 spot on the recent February 2022 psychometrician licensure examination. The authors are MPs Narciso C. Uek, Lanang T. Ali Jr., Omar Yasser C. Sema, Nabil A. Tan, Susana S. Anayatin, Eddie M. Ali, Ibrahim D. Ali, Ahmad Ayabas, Aida M. Silongan, and Atzfar H. Usman.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion that PR 688 be treated as simple resolution and be included in the business for the day. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 688 is hereby treated as simple resolution and is now included in the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary General to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General,
Proposed Resolution Number 692, Resolution calling on the Minister of Public Order and Safety to adopt a reintegration program for former members of Dawla Islamiyah who expressed their desire to abandon armed struggle and become productive members of society. The principal author is MP Maysara D. Latif, and the co-authors are MPs Don Mustafa Ilong, Punduma Bisani, Eddie M. Ali, Safrula M. Dipatuan, by Maleha B. Candao, Abdullah B. Hashim, Basit S. Abbas, Hatimil Hasan, Melanio U. Ulama, Susana S. Anayatin, Faiz S. Alaudin, Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman, and Jamila D. Ramos.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
there's a motion that 692 be referred to the Committee on Public Order and Safety. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 692 is hereby referred to the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary General to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so directed.
Proposed Resolution Number 693, Resolution calling on the Ministry of Social Services and Development to provide basic household tools to the internally displaced persons of Marawi City, particularly those residing in MAA sectors 1 to 4. This is principally authored by MP Maysara D. Latif and co-authored by MPs Don Mustafa Ilong, Punduma Bisani, Eddie M. Ali, Safrula M. Dipatuan, by Maleha B. Candao, Abdullah B. Hashim, Basit S. Abbas, Hatimil I. Hasan, Melanio U. Ulama, Susana S. Anayatin, Faiz S. Alaudin, Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman, and Jamila D. Ramos.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Social Services and Development.
There's a motion that PR 693 be referred to the Committee on Social Services and Development. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 693 is referred to the Committee on Social Services and Development.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary General to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so directed.
Proposed Resolution Number 694, Resolution directing the Minister of Trade, Investments, and Tourism to identify tourist destinations or places of interest within the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao with the end in view of crafting measures that will promote and make them accessible online. The principal author is MP Maysara D. Latif. Co-authors are MPs Don Mustafa Ilong, Suharto M. Ambuludto, by Maleha B. Candao, Basit S. Abbas, Abdul Muhmin A. Mujahid, Abdullah B. Hashim, Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman, Jamila D. Ramos, and Modayaw M. Sakar.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Trade, Investment, and Tourism.
There's a motion that PR 694 be referred to the Committee Trade and Industry and Tourism. Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 694 is hereby referred to the Committee on Trade, Investment, and Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, again, may we request the Secretary General to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so directed.
Proposed Resolution Number 695, Resolution directing the Committee on Public Order and Safety to conduct investigation in aid of legislation on the death of Amirusin Tampid Dumaug with the end in view of crafting measures that will prevent or mitigate the occurrence of similar incident. The principal author is MP Maysara D. Latif, and the co-authors are MPs Don Mustafa Ilong, Suharto M. Ambuludto, by Maleha B. Kandao, Basit S. Abbas, Abdul Mumin A. Mujahid, Abdullah B. Hasim, Jamila D. Ramos, and Mudayaw M. Sakar.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
It's a motion that PR 695 be referred to the Committee on Public Order and Safety. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 695 is hereby referred to the Committee on Public Order and Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so directed.
Proposed Resolution Number 696, Resolution urging the Marawi Rehabilitation Program Steering Committee Project Management Office to include in its program a psychosocial intervention for the Marawi IDP children in the temporary shelters. The principal author is MP Maysara D. Latif, and the co-authors are MPs Don Mustafa A. Loong, Suharto M. Ambulutto, by Maleha B. Kandao, Basit S. Abbas, Abdul Mumin A. Mujahid, Abdullah B. Hasim, Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman, Jamila D. Ramos, and Mudayaw M. Sakar.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Special Committee on Marawi.
There's a motion that PR 696 be referred to the Special Committee on Marawi Rehabilitation. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 696 is referred to the Special Committee on Marawi Rehabilitation.
Mr. Speaker, again, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so directed.
Proposed Resolution Number 697, Resolution expressing sincerest sympathies and deepest condolences to the bereaved family of former chairperson of the Social Welfare Committee of Moro Islamic Liberation Front, Jamia Babumia M. Hussain, and recognizing her role in the success of the Bangsamoro struggle. The
Mr.
principal
Speaker.
author is Aida M. Silongan, and the co-authors are MPs Mohagar M. Iqbal, Abdulaziz M. Ismail, and Susana S. Anayatin.
Mr. Speaker, may I make a quick manifestation?
Yes, may
Well,
we,
yes, we recognize the gentleman from Pagalungan, MP Abdullah Hashim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would like to give my sincere condolences to the death of Gemia Hussain, who is fondly known to those around her and who know her as Babu Mia. She is a close colleague of my father, the late and former chairman of the MILF, Chairman Salamat Hashim. They have known each other since their younger years. And from what I heard, Babu Mia was an active member of the struggle since the time of the MNLF, from before the MILF has separated. I have personally witnessed her devotion to the struggle as a child in Camp Bakap and as a young teen in the Islamic Center in Bulyuk Complex. So in that note, I would like to be a co-author of this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We take note
Yes.
of the requests of MP Abdullah Hashim.
yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as a simple resolution and be transferred for the business.
There's a motion that PR 697 be treated as simple resolution when transferred to the business for the day. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 697 is hereby treated as simple resolution and is included in the business for the day.
Mr. Speaker, now we proceed to item number 8, privilege speech, privilege hour. The first member of the Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to deliver his privilege speech is no less than the Minister of Basic, Higher and Technical Education. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP Mohagir M. Iqbal to deliver his privilege speech, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Gentleman from Maguindanao, the Minister of the Ministry of Basic, Higher and Technical Education, MP Mohagir Iqbal is recognized to deliver his privilege speech. Your Honor, may I inquire, is your privileged speech connected with any of the pending legislations before the committee? None.
It's a pure and simple privilege speech.
Thank you very much. You may proceed, Your Honor, with your privileged speech.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وبعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The Honorable Chief Minister of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Honorable Chief Minister Ahud Balawag Ibrahim, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, Madam Minority Floor Leader, respective colleagues in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, friends, partners, stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, may peace be on us all. Again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Chief Minister, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of this august hall of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, I stand before you today on a matter of personal and collective privilege. My speech is entitled, "Today's Decision Determines Tomorrow's Destiny." These past few days, while looking at my young children, it made me reminisce what I have done in the past in relation to the exercise of my right to suffrage. In my years after years of existence and almost 50 years in the armed struggle, I only cast my votes twice. This made me realize that in some way I was remiss in the exercise of my basic constitutional right to vote. Maybe back then, some matters were more paramount than my right to vote. Good thing, our armed struggle has landed us to the accomplishment of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. But human as we are, we desire for more, especially so when what is at stake is the fate of the future generations. Nevertheless, despite of what we have achieved so far, I came to realize that we are still in the face of a struggle. That struggle is more complex, more vicious, and definitely the hardest of them all. That struggle now is the field of political arena and all its surrounding dirty games and inordinate schemes. And now I finally realize that there is a need to exercise our right of suffrage, and collectively we should once again be one body for a single cause of choosing a worthy candidate for the position of President of the Republic of the Philippines. A candidate who will preserve and defend the Bangsamoro cause, a candidate who will assume or who will assure that our women and children will not suffer the atrocities of the past and instead wake up to a bright and colorful future brought about by living in a peaceful, harmonious, and developed community. In the same vein, we cannot support a candidate who will bring back the horrors of the past or not honor the sacrifices of our brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 10, and I quote, "The believers are nothing but brothers, so make settlement between your brothers and fear Allah that you may receive mercy," unquote. Solidarity and union give power, strength, and courage in any particular community or group, and it becomes so much difficult for the external forces to crush, break, or harm an individual in a solid community. People feel strong and secure in those societies and networks where there are less conflicts and more understanding among its leaders. This leads to faster growth of society and also leads to the realization of something bigger and better in the world. Solidarity and cohesiveness are the greatest blessings of Almighty Allah and the major elements of success in every aspect of the Muslims. A Muslim should endure that and be patient with the brother Muslims in order to avoid conflicts and further misunderstanding. Differences in opinions should be resolved in a peaceful manner. Surah Al-Anfal, verse 46 states that, "And obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not dispute, and thus lose courage, your strength would depart, and be patient. Indeed, Allah is with the patient." Despite our busy schedule, despite our personal differences and misunderstandings, if any, we should pause and recollect to our sad experiences, personally or through our forefathers that pushed us to join the revolutionary movement. We should consider the higher interest of the Bangsamoro people. Certainly, a leader who will be a pure politician and does not understand the cause of the Bangsamoro will definitely be a problem to us. Remember, what makes the peace negotiation a bumpy road is because of the lack of commitment of the persons leading the Malacanang Palace back then. If we will not unite on this, remember that the Bangsamoro Organic Law is not really the full embodiment of the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro or CAB. The present Bangsamoro Organic Law is still a work in progress. In fact, there are lots of things that need to be discussed and argued in the Intergovernmental Relations Board or body. There are a lot of deliberation on the part of the national government, but we will not stop in claiming it, since this is part of the assertion of a right for self-determination. To mention a few that might be at stake after the change of administration is the continuity of the aspect of policing. Article 2, Section 2 of the Republic Act number 11054 or the BOL states that entry into the Philippine Police of Moro Islamic Liberation Front and Moro National Liberation Front members from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region shall be availed of within a period of 5 years from ratification of this organic law. However, up to now, Mr. Speaker, we have yet to commence this process, and the MILF and MLF are at the losing end. Why? Because of the reckoning period. If the elected president on May 9, 2022 will be strict with the implementation of this law, we will only have 2 years left to facilitate the entry of our members to the Philippine National Police. Another thing, we have yet to set up the Bangsamoro Justice System and the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission and other important aspects of the CAB and the Bangsamoro Organic Law. I do not want to think what will happen to us if the elected head of the state is one who has no genuine concern for the Bangsamoro and instead will work to reverse the gains we have achieved. Just in case, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ease. Until then, we should be reminded of Surah Al-Imran, verse 103, and I quote, and hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether and do not become divided. And remember the favor of Allah upon you when you were enemies, and he brought your hearts together and become by his favor brothers, and you were on the edge of a pit of the fire and save you from it. Thus Allah does make it clear to you his verses that you may be guided. Unquote. My dear colleagues in this august body, barely 2 months from now, and we will be exercising our right of suffrage in the first ever election in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao on May 9, 2022, national and local election. We should choose a president who is a friend of the Bangsamoro people and has the academic preparation, deep experience in public service, demonstrated untiring service to the people, decisiveness, and someone who satisfies the moral uprightness to lead the country. Individually, we are part of the electorate who are matured and well-informed voters of the right, but collectively, we are divided due to our individual family, social, and national affiliations. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the parable of the believers in their affection, mercy, and compassionate for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleepiness and fever. May we be different, just like the body parts, but an act of one Muslim hurts us all. May we be reminded this, and let us be strong and cohesive for one another. We should not only take care of ourselves, but also of our brothers and sisters. This afternoon, before we go to bed, or tonight, before we go to bed and lay to the warmth and comfort of our seats, remember this: the leader we choose today is the leader in whose hands depend the fate of the Filipino nation and the Bangsamoro people for the next 6 years or even more. I can wait for the day where we wake up one day that we are one with one stance for one Bangsamoro. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the wisdom and courage and overcome whatever test ahead of us. Inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. We thank the honorable member of the parliament for reminding us of our responsibility and obligation to exercise our right to suffrage and also to choose national leaders that would determine the fate of the Bangsamoro people, and whose mind the interest of the Bangsamoro people will be centered in his platform or her platform.
Yes, Mr.
Majority
Speaker.
Leader.
May we request the Secretariat to include it and be part of the record for journal for today's session.
The privileged
speech of MP Mahathir.
Privileged speech of the gentleman from Maguindanao, the Honorable Minister of MBTHE, is hereby included in the part of today's session.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP Attorney Omar Yasser Sema to deliver his privileged speech, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Cotabato City, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, Attorney Omar Sema, is recognized. Is the privileged speech of the gentleman connected with any of the pending legislation before the committees?
No, Mr. Speaker, this is just a simple message.
Thank you.
In light of the celebration of
Deputy Speaker.
commemoration of the Javida Massacre, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. May proceed.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. The Honorable Speaker, Ali Pangalian Balindong, the presiding officer, Deputy Speaker Ziaul Rahman Alonto Adyong, the Majority Floor Leader, the leaders of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front here present, the leaders of the Moro National Liberation Front here present, my colleagues in the BTA Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow marks the 54th anniversary of the Javida Massacre, a day in infamy dubbed as the day that brought forth the Moros in united uprising against an oppressive regime. That before that day, trains of abuses and systematic disruption and displacement were committed against the Bangsamoro. And it is that day that made our leaders realize that the Moro homeland from 1948 to 1968 was only 2 decades under the Republic of the Philippines. And since then, we have generations after generations stood up to defend our homeland, identity, and way of life, our hula, bangsa, and agama. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, because of the sacrifices of the martyrs in Corregidor, and because of the decision to rise up, we have declared March 18 as the Bangsamoro Freedom Day. Moreover, if not for that bloody day in Corregidor, we would not have achieved what we have now, our self-governance, our identity as Bangsamoro, and our right to legislate in accordance with our way of life, deeply ingrained in Republic Act 11054, otherwise known as the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Mr. Speaker, I am taking the rostrum to remind and join each and every member of the BTA Parliament and each and every Moro leader and every ordinary Moro to guard against the open attempt at historical revisionism, especially during these interesting times leading to the 2022 elections. Mr. Speaker, there may never be another time for this, but please let me muster my courage here to exhort all of us here, including myself and all of our people, that our history and experience of our ancestors under oppressive regimes should continue to guide us in our decisions. Mr. Speaker, I have so many things to state here, but in order to avoid politicking, let me just ask our colleague, MP, Ustad Abdul Mujahid Al-Yakani to lead us in prayer and in remembrance of those who have went away before us.
This is the privileged speech of the gentleman from Cotabato City.
This will include my privileged speech.
Will the majority leader allow that kind of arrangement?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Please, MP Mujahid, your prayers as an attachment to the privileged speech of MP, Deputy Speaker Omar Sema.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين يا الله آمين يا رب العالمين ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم اللهم ارحم شهداءنا اللهم اغفر لهم وعافهم واعف عنهم اللهم أعطهم ما وعدتهم لأنبيائك يا الله يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنا نسألك أن تؤجرهم أجرا عظيما أجر الشهداء اللهم إنا نسألك يا اللهم أن ترزقهم بما وعدتهم من الرزق والحسن والنعمة ومسائر الحسنات في مكانهم ومقارهم ومقابرهم يا الله يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم ارحمنا فإنك بنا راحم ولا تعذبنا فإنك علينا قادر والتف فيما جرى بنا المقادير يا الله يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنا نسألك الخير كله عاجله وعاجله ما علمنا منه وما لا نعلم ونستعيذك من الشر كله آجله وعاجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم اللهم إنا نسألك يا الله أن تجعل جهادنا جهادا مباركا وكفاهنا كفاها فيها صلاحنا وفلاحنا في الدنيا والآخرة ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Omar Sema. And would like to personally associate myself with your remarks, and perhaps we offer that prayer to those who have fallen on March 18, 1968, and offer the prayer to those who have fallen fighting for our right to exist.
Yes, again, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP as far as what to deliver his privileged speech.
The gentleman from MP Usman, the gentleman from Sulu, the island provinces, is recognized for his privileged speech. Is the privileged speech of the gentleman connected with any of the pending legislation before the committee?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, please, the gentleman may proceed with his privileged speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Honorable Speaker, Attorney Pangalian Balindong, and of course, Honorable Chief Minister Ahod Ibrahim Alhaj, our Deputy Speakers in the Parliament, Presiding Officer, Deputy Speaker Jia Ul Rahman Adjong, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, my colleagues in the Parliament, guests, friends, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I stand before you today on matter of a collective and personal privilege in connection with the commemoration tomorrow of our Bangsamoro Freedom Day. Mr. Speaker, it is an established fact that one of the factors that ignited the Bangsamoro struggle, aside from the historical roots of the problem, was the massacre at Corregidor Island, dubbed as the Javida Massacre, on March 18, 1968. On that fateful day, scores of Moro youth were treacherously killed by security sectors of the national government in Manila. Thus sparked massive shocking reactions from the Bangsamoro community all over the country, particularly in the Bangsamoro homeland of Mindanao, Sulu, and Palawan. As everyone of us knows, and a living witness to the horrors of war as a result of the Bangsamoro struggle for self-determination, for freedom and self-determination, thousands of our people were killed, wounded, displaced in their own homeland, and still thousands of our refugees in the neighboring state of Sabah until today. And millions worth of property were destroyed. To make the story short, Alhamdulillah, our Bangsamoro prawns, the MILF, the MNLF, opted to come to the terms of peace. And eventually, of course, the 1996 peace agreement was signed. And our Bangsamoro organic law today were ratified by our people as a result of those agreements or arrangement for us in the Bangsamoro. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as in my capacity as chairman of the MNLF Youth and the Central Committee of the Moro National Liberation Front, and as member of this Parliament, Bangsamoro Transition Authority, I would like to enjoin and remind each and every one of us that those blood and tears and sweat of our martyrs shall not go in vain. We in this transition authority shall always be reminded that we owe them a lot. And we can only repay our people, our martyrs, through our good and moral governance. That's the only payment that we could afford to them. And we cannot afford any other things than that, Mr. Speaker. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate also that this March 18 is the 54th declaration of Bangsamoro Freedom Day, and thus also a commemoration of the founding anniversary of the Moro National Liberation Front. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you to the gentleman from the island provinces, MP Adsfar Osman. We extend our greetings to the leadership of the Moro National Liberation Front on their founding anniversary tomorrow. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, may proceed to item number 10, second stage of bills. May we respectfully recognize MP Abdul Mumin Mujahid to deliver the sponsors of speech of PT Parliament Bill number 127, Your Honor.
The gentleman from Basilan, the Honorable MP Mujahid, is recognized to deliver his authorship speech on BTA Bill number 127. Proceed, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. To begin with, allow me to acknowledge the honorable members of this prestigious chamber of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament, particularly the Honorable Chief Minister Ahod Balawag Ibrahim, our Speaker, Attorney Ali Pangalian Balindong, the presiding officer of today's session, Honorable Jiaur Rahman Aluntu Ajong, all deputy speakers, and the majority floor leader, Attorney Lanang Ali, and all other colleges of these chambers, guests, visitors, friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Mr. Speaker, brothers and sisters in this parliament, I'm standing before you this moment firstly to express my concern over the non-availability of hospital in the municipality of Tipo and nearby municipalities of Albarca and Ongkaya, Pucan, wherein hospitals and medical facilities only exist and confined in the cities of Isabela and Lamitan in the province of Basilan. At this point of time, Mr. Speaker, there are only 2 hospitals in Lamitan City, the Lamitan District Hospital, and the other one is the Torres Memorial Hospital, a private hospital with only limited bed capacity and inadequate medical facilities, of which they catered patients from the municipalities of Akbar, Muhammad Azul, Tuburan, Tipo, Albarca, and Ongkaya, Pucan. While in Isabela City, Mr. Speaker, there are only 3 hospitals, also with limited bed capacities and not well-functioning facilities or equipment. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of this chamber, Tipo municipality is a 4th-class municipality and has the population of 25,531 according to 2020 census. It is geographically located at the eastern coast of Basilan province and has land area of 217 square kilometers or about 83.78% square miles, which constitutes about 7% of Basilan's total area, with 11 barangays and about 257 households. It has about 31.6% poverty incidence based in 2012 report. Another municipality who are recipients of Tipo Hospital, if established, are the constituents of Albarca and Ongkaya, Pucan. The municipality of Albarca has a population of 23,736 as determined by the 2020 census, with 16 barangays, while Ongkaya, Pucan has the population of 24,016, with 16 total barangays. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, there are about 39 total number of barangays with land area of about 662 square kilometers. That constitutes about 20% of Basilan total land area and a total of 73,823 population. Mr. Speaker, for the information of this Honorable Parliament, Tipo and nearby municipalities of Albarca and Ongkaya, Pucan have devastated so much during the conflicts in Mindanao, as it was considered as an MNLF and then MILF war-torn areas prior to sign agreement with the government of the Republic of the Philippines. Hence, as a result of the said man-made catastrophic events, houses and almost all structures in these areas were destroyed or damaged, and more so with an absence of health facilities and services to the people, to the poor people. And besides, it became prevalent and has detrimental effects so far to the plight of the civilians in the area. With the increasing number of populations and the society or the scarcity of medical services in the municipality of Tipo-Tipo and its neighboring municipalities of Albarca and Uncaya, Pucan, and some part of Sumisip and Tabuan Lasa municipality, the establishment of Level 1 Tipo-Tipo Hospital with at least 15 or more bed capacities in this town is indispensably needed, especially during this pandemic period, of which we still do not know when and it will end, Mr. Speaker. My honorable colleagues, your consent and support to the subject matter will surely ease the medical and health deficiency of the people of Tipo-Tipo and neighboring municipalities, and some part of Sumisip, Tabuan Lasa, and Tabuan Lasa. Mr. Speaker, as they will no longer feel the pain and stress of traveling long hours to Zamboanga City or even to Sabela City for an emergency medication necessities. In addition to this, Mr. Speaker, respective members of the Parliament, the Honorable Mayor of Tipo-Tipo, Honorable Arcam Istarol, and his Vice Mayor, Honorable Ingaton Istarol, have frequently requested this representation to find ways or enact a law for the purpose of establishing a municipal hospital in their area. Thus, this how ardent and eager the local officials thereof in addressing the urgent medical needs of their constituencies. Actually, Mr. Speaker, personally, they asked me to urgently pass this law upon hearing that I already passed this in the Parliament, in the plenary. And they even offered the old building of their municipalities, Mr. Speaker, to temporarily locate just in case this proposed bill be realized, Mr. Speaker. Now, therefore, Mr. Speaker, the establishment of Tipo-Tipo Level 1 Hospital with 15 or more bed capacities as part of the proactive steps of the Bangsamoro government to serve governance and in pursuit to provide medical services and protect the health of the people will surely contribute significant approach towards delivery of health services that may easily be accessible and at affordable cost in times of health emergencies, especially for the underprivileged Bangsamoro constituents. Along this presentation, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I humbly and respectfully appeal to your good honors to strongly support and immediately adopt and approve this bill, which will call for the establishment of Tipo-Tipo Level Hospital with 15 bed capacities or more to address the medical necessities of the people in the mentioned municipality and neighboring local government units, and thereby allow them to enjoy what other municipal hospitals are now benefiting from through the aid and support of the government. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you, MP Mujahid, for the authorship speech. Majority Leader.
Yes. Again, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP Don Long first. to deliver his sponsorship speech on BT Bill, Parliament Bill number 168, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, but before we recognize the honorable gentleman from Sulu, I'd like to ask, remind the members, those of you who wish to be co-author of Parliament Bill number 127 and the one that is now being discussed at hand by authored by MP Don Loong, please list down, please fill up the form that was given to you earlier. The gentleman from Sulu, MP Don Loong, is recognized for his authorship speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Majority Leader, brothers and sisters, elders in the Bangsamoro Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'alahi wa barakatuhu. I am delivering this sponsorship speech on the proposed bill entitled The Diversity, Equity and Inclusivity in Public Service Act of 2022 of the Bangsamoro. The concept of diversity, particularly in ethnicity, encompasses the acceptance and mutual respect. It means the understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing our individual differences. It is the exploration of these differences in a safe, positive and nurturing environment. It is about understanding each other and moving beyond simple tolerance to embracing and celebrating the rich dimensions of diversity contained within each individual. This is a perfect bill in the 54th celebration of the Moro National Liberation Front, as well as the Bangsamoro Day. The blessing of autonomy that we enjoy today is a product of our elders' long, tedious, but persistent efforts and sacrifices, some of whom are still living and are members of this august body. The political theorists labeled their sacrifice as the struggle for self-determination. On the other hand, sociologists call it separatism, defined as an advocacy of cultural, ethnic, tribal, religious, racial, governmental, or gender separation from the larger group. Our struggle was motivated by many social and political factors. These factors are shared and of common interest to the entire Bangsamoro amidst the diversity in ethnicity. Thankfully, the political genius of Chairman Hashim Salamat and Chairman Nur Miswari unified our people into what we are now, the Bangsamoro, with common goals and aspirations, united primarily by the belief in one place, one nation, and one religion, or as we call it, in Tausug, the Hula Bangsa Agama. In the early 1960s, my father told me, Dr. Muhammad Sali Loong, when they were in Cairo together with late Chairman Hashim Salamat, Sheikh Ustad Pasigan, late Abul Khair Alonto, as well as our Wali, Sheikh Khalifa Nando. How it started, early 1960s in Egypt, all the flags of all the student scholars in Cairo were being raised there. And there were hundreds of Muslim Filipinos, but there was only the Philippine flag. There was no Bangsamoro flag then. And what happened? They cried. My father said, he also cried together. And you know why? Because they said they wanted a representation of the Bangsamoro there, of the Muslims living in the Philippines. And Alhamdulillah, we have the Chief Minister, Bapa Sami, with us in the Parliament. And many of their colleagues in the batch 300 are no longer here. Their colleagues like my father, Dr. Muhammad Sali Loong, his brother, Magdar Loong, his nephew, Abu Bakar Loong, his nephew, Damir Loong, who are part of the batch 300 and who had struggled. And they had yearned for a Bangsamoro that is united with equality and justice. However, the Bangsamoro as we know now is diversified into various tribes composed of the Maranao, Maguindanao, the Tausug, and the minority tribes, the Iranun, Yakan, Sama, Bajau, Teduray, and other IP groups. The BOL has even expanded this to include settlers and other residents of the Bangsamoro. This autonomy created the unintended consequence of creating minority groups amongst us and are recognized and protected by the national government and the members of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission by including in the ball several guarantees and promotion of diversity. Article 3, Section 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the ball are both recognition of our diversity, requirements for inclusivity, and guarantees for our equality. Section 6, promotion of unity. The Bangsamoro government shall promote unity, peace, justice, goodwill among all people, as well as encourage just and peaceful settlement of disputes. Section 7, social justice. The Bangsamoro government shall ensure every Filipino citizen equal opportunities in life. Section 9, rights of non-Moro IPs. Section 10, freedom of choice. The ball is one of the few laws that prohibit discrimination. The term discrimination is used to describe situations where specific individuals are treated differently and less favorably because of certain characteristics such as, for instance, their race, their sex, their religion, their political opinion. To prevent this, the ILO had prohibited the discrimination in the Employment Convention in 1958. But according to the ILO, internal discrimination or discrimination against certain sections within some IPs based on internal systems or social stratification is still an unexplored and undeveloped phenomenon. This bill is intended to prevent, if not address, the seemingly internal discrimination in our recruitment and hiring processes. Para siyang anay na unti-unting kinakain ang struktura ng Bangsamoro. While inclusion does not require a seat for everyone, it nevertheless requires equitable representation. The UN had defined inclusivity as the extent and manner in which the views and needs of the parties to conflict and other stakeholders are represented. In one published report, inclusion is the most important aspect to avoid the views and needs of elites drowning out those of the wider population. To strengthen a society's ability to avoid relapse into armed violence, groups in society beyond those immediately involved in conflict also need to be included. The purpose of this bill is precisely to avoid imposition of the majority view on a broader population that can create resentment among our people, to avoid relapse to armed violence, to prevent ethnic monopoly of an office, and more importantly, to ensure the unity of the Bangsamoro. As early as now, there are already growing advocacy for two autonomous regions in Muslim Mindanao, one for the islands in Basulta and another for the mainland. Why is this? Because we are not addressing the issue of diversity, equality, and equity. This aspiration is misguided as it may be, is driven by their discontent on the way we are doing many things. Among them is the belief that our hiring processes are discriminatory against the people from the islands. To illustrate, let us look at the screen. This is a summary of just 6 ministries, ladies and gentlemen. For the 6 ministries that we have asked, this is the official report. The distribution is, out of 200, a sampling of 200 employees, there are 222 Maguindanaoan employees. There are 76 Maranao. There is 26 Tausug, 25, and as you could see, Sama 3, Yakan 2. This is the sampling of all of it. We'll look at it individually. Could you just flash it swiftly? For example, in the MPOS, 14, 12, it's clear. Next. In the MTIT, there are 74 Maguindanaoan, 5 Maranao, 4 Tausug, 2 Iranon. Next. For the MIPA, as we could know, there are 24 Tiduray, 12 Maguindanaoan, 3 Iranon, nawawala ang Tausug, but it's okay kasi IP naman. Next. Sa human settlements, there are 32 Maranao, 12 Maguindanaoan, 3 Iranon, 2 Tausug, no Yakan. Next. MPW, there are 63 Maguindanaoan, 12 Maranao, 5 Tausug. Next. Mole, there are 37 Maguindanaoan, 15 Maranao, 10,000 to Iranaon. In short, MOST, there are 85 Maguindanaon, 12 Maranao, but you now see in facts and data are speaking for itself. Could we just go flash the summary, please? The point I'm saying here is that this might not be an issue today, but it will parang anay siyang kakainin ang ating sistema. We need to address this because these regional officials will be the ones making the plans for programs. They will be the one dividing the pie, the block grant, and kawawa naman ng ating mga kababayan. So I have made that point clear. And even in the provincial and local offices, so we can see that there are people from the mainland who are in the provincial offices in the islands. So baka pwede rin natin pong i-address ito. Nonetheless, this proposed bill does not demand equality in representation. It simply asks for equity. It is based on fairness and justice rather than in numbers. It gives the minority what they need rather than elevating them to the same status as the majority. It is to respect our differences and diversity. Supporting and protecting diversity is extremely important because by valuing individuals and groups free from prejudice, by fostering a climate where equality and mutual respect are intrinsic, we will create a success-oriented, cooperative, caring community that draws intellectual strength and produces innovative solutions from the synergy of its people. Section 3 of the bill requires that every tribe be equitably represented in every office or ministry by ensuring that the positions therein are equitably distributed among these tribes. Section 4 requires that a single tribe should not dominate an office. In short, each ministry or agency in the regional office must be a microcosm of the Bangsamoro region. Section 5 intends to ensure that the residents of the said province occupy the provincial offices. While recognizing our diversity, these provisions intend to ensure inclusivity and unity amongst us. This will increase coordination, relationships, teamwork among our people, and will compel us to become just and tolerant. This bill does not demand that we reorganize the current bureaucracy. No, hindi po. Okay na po yung existing na yan. Section 10 of the bill expressly states that it will not have any retroactive effect. Hence, yung mga na-employ na po, okay na po yan. May mga konti na lang na hindi pa na-employ. Baka pwede mag-affirmative action po ang government of the day at ang parliament. For some of us who still doubt the wisdom of the bill, I invite you to ponder on Mahatma Gandhi's saying, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. In brief, this proposed bill is simply a guarantee that we will not return to the challenges we faced in the arm. It is also a manifestation of our commitment to the moral governance principle that this government advocates and our adherence to the principles of our own religion. Allah informed us in the Quran that He could have created us into one nation, but He divided us into tribes only for identification. O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. In Surah Al-Maidah, He would have created you into one nation, but He intended to test you in what He has given you, so raise to all that is good. In both of these verses, we conclude, like the many things we have known in this world, our own diversity is a test that we should raise to do the right thing because the noblest is the most right thing. In illustrating this surah should be applied in the last sermon in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He declared during his last sermon, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has any superiority over a white, except by piety and good intention. Learn that every Muslim is a brother to every Muslim, and that Muslims constitute one brotherhood. Nothing shall be legitimate to a Muslim which belongs to a fellow Muslim unless it was given freely and willingly. And in closing, and as part of what he had said in the closing statement, do not therefore do injustice to yourselves. Remember, one day you will meet Allah and answer your deeds. So beware, do not stray from the path of the righteous after I am gone. My fellow members of the Parliament, in this diversity, if not provided with precautionary measures, and if left unregulated, can be likened to a decay that will slowly spread from the inside and eventually eat up the entire system. Before we know it, we are already enemies of one another, if not our own selves. I was in Sulu last week, and it's the same thing that the young people are saying. Baka pwedeng ease of doing business, sabi ng kabataan at mga teacher. Nahihirapan kami pumunta dun sa Cotabato para mag-apply at mag-process ng mga applications namin. Baka may paraan na mas mapapadali sa amin. And here we are, we see intense, 1-8% lang yung taga-islands compared sa dito na, ibig sabihin, you compose 70% of the employment sa mainland at nandito na rin yung regional office. Yung nasa malayo, konti na, mahirap pa mag-access ng services. Napakahirap po. Brothers and sisters in the Parliament, the quest for self-determination of the Bangsamoro. When my father, late Ustad Hashim Salamat, Sheikh Pasigan, Abul Khair Alonto cried in Egypt during that anniversary of Egypt, and they prayed that we will have representation. It carried with it equality because there, the Tausug was not higher than the Maguinanawan, nor higher than the Maranao. They were all brothers, equal in faith, equal in strength, equal in representation. We are all the children of the Bangsamoro. Any mediation, if done with bias, will cause more conflict. And if you are a father or a mother, you know that the only way to raise children who are just and cooperative is by being equal to them. Be equal, give them equity. Equity, equality is the only way that we will be able to ensure that we will have a Bangsamoro that is united, prosperous, helping one another, proud, and a future generation of progressive, empowered Bangsamoro. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, MP Don Long, for that impassioned speech. By the way, Majority Leader, what's the treatment of all the authorship
Mr.
speech?
Speaker.
Should we refer
Yes,
all
Mr.
those
Speaker,
issues to the
we should first,
committees?
Yes, in number 1, Mr. Speaker, on BTA Parliament Bill number 127, I move to refer this to the Committee on Health and the Committee on Finance, Budget and Management.
There's a
Mr.
motion that Parliament Bill number 127 be referred to the Committee on Health and to the Committee on Finance and Budget Management. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, Parliament Bill number 127 is now referred to the Committee on Health and to the Committee on Budget and Finance Management.
Mr. Speaker, on number 2, I move to refer this to the Committee on Rules.
There's a motion that Parliament Bill number 168 be referred to the Committee on Rules. Any objection to the motion? What about Committee on Ethics? Majority Leader. Or, by the way, you just decide.
Yes, Mr.
In the Committee on Rules.
Committee on
Okay, there's a motion that PTA Parliament Bill number 168 be referred to the Committee on Rules. Any objection? Hearing none, Parliament Bill number 168 is referred to the Committee on Rules.
Mr. Speaker, to give justice to MP Saprola, may we recognize MP Saprola to deliver his sponsorship speech on be related on the Kapay District Hospital, if he is that so, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, Mr. Speaker. May we respectfully recognize MP Saprola de Pator, Mr. Speaker.
With the indulgence of MP Samprula, I know he was waiting he's waiting in the Zoom. Majority, may I call for a 2-minute suspension?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. With due respect, MP Samprula, I know you're waiting online. Session is suspended.
Okay.
Now recognize the gentleman from Ganasi, MP Dr. Safrula Dipatuan, to deliver his authorship speech.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الكريم سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن دعا بدعوته إلى يوم الدين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. At the outset, let me first acknowledge our beloved Chief Minister, Ahud Balawag Ibrahim, the Speaker of the Parliament, Attorney Pangalian Balindong, and other officials of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. My dear fellow members of the Parliament, let me mention once again that Republic Act 11054, otherwise known as the Bangsamoro Organic Law, provides that the Bangsamoro government shall adopt a policy on health that provides for a comprehensive and integrated health service delivery for its constituents. It shall establish by law a general hospital system to serve the health requirements of each people, to ensure that the individual basic right to life shall be attainable through the prompt intervention of excellent and affordable medical services. The Bangsamoro government shall promote the right to health of the people and instill health consciousness among them. It shall also uphold the people's right to have access to essential goods, health, and other social services that promote their well-being. The Parliament shall enact appropriate legislation towards this end. Furthermore, improvement of basic healthcare delivery is one of the top 5 main priority thrusts of our interim Chief Minister Alhaj Murad Ibrahim, in order that our long-suffering people will be able to immediately feel the gains of the peace process. My co-members of the Parliament, I am privileged to introduce proposed Bill number 172, an act establishing and constructing a level 1 municipal hospital with 25-bed capacity in municipality of Kapay, Lanao del Sur, and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. The action, therefore, of this representation is in pursuance of the realization of our role as legislators that craft laws for the achievement of the objectives of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Government headed by our beloved interim Chief Minister. This measure seeks to establish a level 1 municipal hospital in the municipality of Kapay, Lanao del Sur, to provide access to basic medical and healthcare services primarily to the people of the municipality of Kapay as well as the municipality of Taguruan, a neighboring municipality. It is most appropriate to establish a hospital in the area to serve and cater the basic health care and medical needs of the more than 30,000 populations of the 2 neighboring municipalities of Kapay and Taguluan. These 2 municipalities are among the geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas in Lanao del Sur whose population are experiencing difficulties in accessing health services because of isolation and poor road infrastructure. In view of this, Mr. Speaker,
and pursuant to the Bangsamoro government's commitment to provide for a comprehensive and integrated health service delivery for its constituents, and established by law a general hospital system to serve the health requirements of its people, immediate approval of this bill is earnestly sought. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Health and the Committee on Finance, Budget and Management.
There's a motion that Parliament Bill number 172 be referred to the Committee on Health and to the Committee on Budget, Finance Management. Any objection? Hearing none, Parliament Bill number 172 is referred to the said two committees.
Mr. Speaker, I move to have a 15-minute break for ASA prayer, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended for Asar prayer. Session resumed. Majority Leader, please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 11, committee reports. May we respectfully recognize the chairman of the Committee on Labor and Employment to deliver the committee report on committee report number 75, entitled in relation to proposed resolution number 170, entitled the resolution calling for the Bangsamoro government to give attention to the plight of Bangsamoro domestic workers and establish suitable programs to serve as alternative economic opportunities for Bangsamoro women who seek overseas employment as domestic helpers. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP Romeo Sema.
The gentleman from Cotabato City, the chairman of the Committee on Labor and Employment, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Romeo Sema, is recognized to deliver his committee report on PR 170.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Adjo. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Labor and Employment has the honor to report back to the BTA Parliament the proposed resolution number 170, entitled a resolution calling for the Bangsamoro government to give attention to the plight of Bangsamoro domestic workers and establish sustainable programs to serve as an alternative economic opportunities for Bangsamoro women who seek overseas employment as domestic workers. Respectfully recommending for its approval with amendments to it. Number 1, the word stop was deleted and gens 2 banned after the word eventually in paragraph 7 of the resolution. Number 2, the last paragraph 9 of the proposed resolution is amended to read as follows. Be it further resolved to request the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA and the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration to furnish the respective reports and relevant data to the Ministry of Labor and Employment concerning the status and conditions of Bangsamoro women deployed overseas as domestic workers to serve as reference for legislations of the Bangsamoro Parliament. The proposed resolution number 170 was already approved as the committee level and was already submitted to the plenary as committee report number 20. However, during the plenary session, due to the absence of its principal author, Ms. Jamila Disemban Ramos, the August body decided to refer back the said resolution to the Committee on Labor and Employment. Upon deliberations of the committee on the proposed resolution on its committee meeting last June 18, 2021, the body approved the said resolution with amendment, recommending that this proposed resolution shall be treated as a simple resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Your Honor, for that committee report. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the committee report number 75 for deliberation, Mr. Speaker.
Committee report number 75 is hereby adopted.
May we respectfully first recognize the principal author, Jamila Ramos. I believe she is to shed lights on this particular resolution, Mr. Speaker. MP Ramos.
We will first open the period of
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I move to open the period of interpellation and debate.
Period of interpellation and debate is hereby open. We recognize the Honorable Lady Flamlano Dulsurin Maguindanao, the MP Jamila Ramos for her. Is that an authorship speech? Yes, for her manifestation and remarks?
The authorship speech, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, as the principal author of this measure. MP Ramos, you're recognized. Please proceed, Your Honor.
A'udhu billahi minash-shaytanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chief Minister Ahod Balawag Ibrahim, Speaker Pangalian Balindong, Deputy Speaker Zia Alonto Diong, Majority Floor Leader Attorney Lanang Ali Jr., Minority Floor Leader Attorney Liza Alamia, the Chair of the Committee on Labor and Employment, MP Romeo Sema, distinguished colleagues of the BTA Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Unang-una, nais ko pong pasalamatan ang Committee on Labor and Employment sa pangunguna po ng chair nito na si MP Romeo Sema at ang kanyang mga membro sa pag-endorso sa plenary nitong ating proposed Resolution number 170 or a resolution calling for the Bangsamoro government to give attention to the plight of Bangsamoro domestic workers and establish suitable programs to serve as alternative economic opportunities for Bangsamoro women who seek overseas employment as domestic workers. Karamihan po sa mga domestic workers ay mga kababaihan. Kaya po itong resolution po na ito ay napapanahon dahil ngayong buwan ng Marso ay ipinagdiriwang natin ang 2022 National Women's Month na may temang We Make Change Work for the Bangsamoro Women. Nais po natin na kasabay ng malaking pagbabago sa ating rehiyon, bunga ng prosesong pangkapayapaan at ng pagkakatatag ng Bangsamoro government na pinamamahalaan ngayon ng Bangsamoro Transition Authority, ay magkaroon din ng tunay na pagbabago sa kalagayan ng mga kababaihang Bangsamoro. As I was asserting during our kickoff ceremony for the National Women's Month, we want meaningful, positive change to also be experienced by our Bangsamoro women. And it bears repeating, pagbabago hindi lamang para sa mga kababaihan, kundi pagbabago kasama ang mga kababaihan. We don't just make change work for the Bangsamoro women. We also enable them to fulfill their important roles in whatever capacity where they can contribute. That is real empowerment. That is meaningful participation. That is the change that we, the Bangsamoro women, want and deserve. Napapanahon na po para ipasa ito ng Bangsamoro Parliament na magbibigay ng karampatang atensyon at magpapatibay sa mga programa at serbisyo para sa mga kababaihang Bangsamoro, lalong-lalo na yung mga nais maghanap buhay sa ibang bansa bilang mga domestic workers. Bakit po natin kailangan itong maipasa? Let me cite some of the provisions of PR 170. Philippines is one of the world's top countries to deploy migrant domestic workers, averaging 86,000 Filipinos every year between 1992 and 2015. In the recent official data released by Philippine Statistics Authority, out of the 2.3 million overseas Filipino workers who worked abroad during the period April to September 2018, 437,000 OFWs hail from BARM. Elementary occupations is at 37.1% and service and sales workers at 18.8%, to which domestic workers belong, was the biggest group of OFWs. Most importantly, majority are female OFWs comprising 55.8% of the total number of OFWs. The Bangsamoro government has the power to develop programs and laws for women. That's under Section 1, Article 5 of RA 11054, and shall uphold and protect the fundamental rights of women, including the right to engage in lawful employment and to be protected from exploitation, abuse, or discrimination as embodied in the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women under Section 12, Article 9 of RA 11054. Yes, overseas employment contributes to our economy, but we should not leave things as they are because our women, the Bangsamoro women, are integrally important in peace building, governance, and development of our region, our society, and our communities. Allow me to briefly share with you the plight of the women who are working overseas as domestic workers. They are essentially left with uncertainty when it comes to their security, overall well-being, and physical, emotional, and mental health. There are documented cases of violence and abuse against domestic workers. These include physical abuse and torture, as well as verbal and emotional abuse. There are even extreme cases where domestic workers die at the cruel hands of their abusive employers. Domestic workers also generally placed in poor working conditions with less time for proper rest that their bodies need, as well as in other benefits that they are supposed to be entitled to. In recent years, there is improvement in the working conditions and benefits of the domestic workers due to the efforts of the Philippine government to close good deals with countries that import our labor force. Even so, the experiences of the domestic workers and what they enjoy at work are still largely far from the ideal, where their rights are protected and their privileges are upheld and fully given to them. This being said, nais po natin na bibigyan ng atensyon ng ating Bangsamoro government ang kalagayan ng ating mga kababaihang Bangsamoro na nagtatrabaho o nais magtrabaho bilang domestic workers sa ibang bansa. Sikapon po natin na mas mapabuti pa ang working conditions and benefits na makukuha ng ating mga domestic workers. At para po sa pangkabuang kalagayan ng ating mga kababayan, it shall be the policy of the Bangsamoro government to provide more options and opportunities para sa lahat, lalong-lalo na po sa ating mga kababaihang Bangsamoro. We don't want our women to be cornered or forced into a situation where they are helpless or suffering. We want better working conditions and benefits for our domestic workers, and we want more options and opportunities for them. Thus, in behalf of all the Bangsamoro women, we call on the Bangsamoro government to give attention to the plight of the Bangsamoro domestic workers and establish suitable programs to serve as alternative economic opportunities for Bangsamoro women who seek overseas employment as domestic workers. Maligayang buwan ng mga kababaihan at mabuhay po tayong lahat. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, MP Ramos, for that remarks.
May we respectfully recognize MP Baintan ng Paton, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Lady from Maguindanao, the good Deputy Minority Leader, MP Engineer Baintan ng Patuan, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. At the outset, I would like to say that I am supportive of the plight of our Bangsamoro domestic workers who are working abroad. Would the good proponent yield to some clarificatory questions?
Are those clarificatory questions cover only the resolution or including the committee report, Your Honor?
Yeah, that
the resolution.
The entire resolution, Mr. Speaker.
The proponent, the lady from
I would
Maguindanao,
gladly accept, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, MP Patuan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've noticed that the resolution is resolution number 170. And based on the order of business, the last resolution that we tackled in this parliament is already resolution number 697, or a difference of 527 resolutions in between the filing of this resolution, Mr. Speaker. My point, Mr. Speaker, is I would like to know when was this filed by the proponent, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the resolution was filed January 13, 2020.
2020, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. January of 2020. And that was the time that we just approved many programs, the budget of the different ministries and offices, including the MOLE, that increased the budget of that ministry as compared to the previous budget of the defunct arm, Mr. Speaker, to a significant level, Mr. Speaker, because we know that our domestic workers are part of the supposed to be beneficiaries of the ministry. My point, Mr. Speaker, is that based on the resolution, its title is to give attention to the plight of Bangsamoro domestic workers. My question, Mr. Speaker, is does the current programs and project of the Ministry of Labor and Employment do not include programs and projects that are intended for the domestic workers, Mr. Speaker?
Well, perhaps the proponent are not much knowledgeable on the case of the administrative priorities of the ministry. And perhaps the sponsor of the committee report, which happens to be the former minister of the Ministry of Labor and Employment, which he heads when this resolution was filed, can give justice to the question being asked by MP Bayantan Patuan. MP Romeo Sema, can you please respond to the question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As former minister of the Ministry of Labor and Employment, I heard the questions of my good friend MP Bayantan Adil. We already included in the programs of the Bangsamoro of the Ministry of Labor and Employment starting 2020 to 2021, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that answer. And precisely my point, Mr. Speaker, that during the filing of this resolution might hold true. But after the passage of the General Appropriations Act in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, we already incorporated significant budget for the plight of our domestic workers, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that this particular resolution becomes moot and academic, Mr. Speaker.
May I also inquire, when was this referred, I think Majority Leader, can you remember exactly what was the year? The filing of the resolution, I believe, was January 2020. But what time or what year, exact year, was the committee took assume authority over this proposed resolution and began their deliberation?
But before I answer, Mr. Speaker, I think this resolution not considered as because it is also considered that is in our proposed Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code, and particularly on the issue on the discriminations of the women. So in our proposed Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code, we put that in one of the major provisions, Mr. Speaker. So I think this is also irrelevant. This resolution is irrelevant, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that answer. But the issue of discrimination is far away from this particular resolution, Mr. Speaker.
So the question, Your Honors, is that would it be moot?
Because, Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that we are putting some negative impression on the Ministry of Labor and Employment, that they are not giving attention to the plight of our domestic workers by adopting this particular resolution. But in fact, we included already a significant budget in our annual Appropriations Act, Mr. Speaker.
May I respond, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, please, MP Ramos.
Well, I believe that the issues on domestic workers is a continuous issue. Recurring po yung problems. At ang gusto lang po natin dito, ang objective natin dito sa resolution, ay magkaroon po ng emphasis na magkaroon po talaga ng comprehensive and suitable programs para po sa ating mga domestic workers. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this resolution is just an expression of the sentiment of the Bangsamoro Parliament. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I don't see any reason why we have not to pass this resolution, Mr. Speaker. And besides, Mr. Speaker, tulad ng sabi ko po, ang programa po dapat ay continuous, no? At patuloy na nire-review po natin ito. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, na ang resolution po na ito ay ang objective po nito ay magkaroon talaga ng komprehensibong programa ang ating Ministry of Labor and Employment para po sa ating mga domestic workers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. But the answer to my question, Mr. Speaker, doesn't necessarily reflect the title of the resolution, Mr. Speaker, because what is mentioned here is to give attention. That means to say we're not giving attention. If we exactly adopt this resolution, Mr. Speaker, which is has a negative connotation on the implementing agency, which is the MOLE, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, we are open to amendments should the good honorable MP wish to propose amendment, Mr. Speaker, to improve the language in the title, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, it's very important that we need to understand what are the current programs and what are the gaps we intend to answer by approving this resolution, Mr. Speaker. And that will define the kind of wordings that we will have in this particular resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Do you have a question? I believe the proponent...
It is a question, Mr. Speaker, of what are the gaps that we intend to answer by approving this resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I think, well, I have mentioned already in my sponsorship, in my authorship speech, Mr. Speaker, the problems being encountered by our domestic workers abroad. So as to the programs being implemented or adopted by the Ministry of Labor and Employment, Mr. Speaker, I wish to invite our honorable former Minister Sema to respond to the programs as to the responsiveness of the programs being implemented by the MOLE as far as the issues confronted by the domestic workers.
I believe the time element is very crucial in answering the questions of MP Ampatuan. If I may direct the attention of the lady from Maguindanao, the interpellator, the last paragraph of the committee report, it says that the committee adopted this resolution on June 18, 2021. So I believe it's more than a year now. Just to contextualize the discussion, to put into context the time element, because that is now being the question of the lady from Maguindanao.
Yes, exactly my point, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker.
please proceed, MP Ampatuan.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Again, it's good that you raised that because I'm actually questioning the timeline and the applicability of this particular resolution at the current time, Mr. Speaker, that we've already increased all the budget of the ministries and offices. What they have requested, especially for the MOLE, from a mere, I think, more than 40 million budget in the defunct arm, the budget now of MOLE raised to more than 100 million already, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is very important for us, if we want to focus on the plight of the domestic workers, we need to identify the current gap, not the previous gap, Mr. Speaker, because we've already done some interventions. But what we need to reflect in the resolution are the specific gaps that we want to answer right now, given that we've already started the funding of the programs and projects of MOLE.
Yes. But before we ask the good lady from Lanao del Sur, Maguindanao to respond, just to be fair, we also cannot fault the proponent why after several months, after over a year, this resolution just came into the attention of the plenary. So perhaps there's a problem in terms of the documentation and the proper numbering of this resolution. It's supposed to be discussed immediately after the committee has adopted the resolution. So I'm just wondering why, after more than a year, we are now discussing this resolution. Just to be fair, to the proponent and perhaps to the committee chair. I don't know where lies the problem. No? Bakit na-delay ng na-delay? But at any rate, since we are now discussing this resolution, please MP Ramos, please can you please respond to the questions being asked by MP Baintan Patuan?
I would like to reiterate what I just said, Mr. Speaker, that the issue on the domestic workers, overseas domestic workers, is a continuous concern, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, hindi dapat po tayo nakakahunlang sa mga programang naipasa o na-implement na natin. Dapat ito po ay nire-review at nadadagdagan para maging komprehensibo po. Sagutin ko lang po, ano po ba yung dapat na mga programa na ating inaasahan na dapat ay susolusyon sa problema ng ating mga domestic workers? Isa na po dito, ang nakikita nating solusyon ay magkaroon ng skills training and upgrading, educational programs and scholarships, entrepreneurial and financing programs, including microcredit and microfinance, and ultimately generate employment. So kung titignan po natin ito po ay malawak na concern na i-address sa simpleng programa lang. Ito po ay dapat ay comprehensive program. So I don't know if the Ministry of Labor and Employment has this kind of program. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, ito pong resolution ay ang main objective po talaga nito ay para masolusyonan through suitable programs para po sa ating mga domestic workers.
Do you have an additional explanation, MP Sema?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Actually, yung program lang natin na from 2021, 2021, Mr. Speaker, is maliit masyado yung budget for program. There's only reintegration program for the domestic workers. Yung programa lang natin para doon sa nagtapos ng kanilang kontrata, 2 years. So it's only 20,000 per beneficiaries. So based on the approved budget, the 2021 at 2020 is only 1,500. Just imagine the applicants is more than 10,000 or more than 10,000 applicants. Then on 2021, we nag-increase po ng 450. So nagiging 2,450 yung approved na beneficiaries for the reintegration program. So hindi rin siya komprehensibo yung programa natin. Although we integrated yung financial literacy programs and the paano sila magawa ng simple feasibility study. On that amount, the 20,000 pesos for the sustainability. So definitely, Mr. Jones, alam din natin 20,000 na malit masyado na pang-kapital for the startup capital nila sa maliit na kanilang negosyo. Then, because our advocacy, Mr. Speaker, is dapat matuto sila magnegosyo. And that is more amount. Then, second, nagkaroon din tayo ng convergence program with the MTIT and the TESDA para matulungan yung ating mga overseas workers. So, but so the comprehensive program, Mr. Speaker, is hindi po tayo it's ang natin ito, ma-address lang natin itong ang overseas worker natin kung meron tayong magandang convergence in the different ministries to address the overseas workers welfare natin. At wala din tayong pondo na nanggagaling sa national. So, depende lang tayo sa pondo sa person the black grant natin. So yun ang isang gap siguro or problem. Of course na kailangan din. This resolution, Mr. Speaker, I said a while ago, that's is relevant. Until is relevant pa rin, but yun na, tama po yung observation ni MP Baintan Adil on the title. So I think in the period of amendments, pwede po natin to siya i-amend. But also the relevant, there is resolution. So I think this is that's why the Committee on Labor and Employment recommending for approval and for simple resolution, Mr. Chair, because the committee is nakita po nila na because the domestic is continuing process na dapat ma-resolve natin. So although, yun ang sabi ko kanina, Mr. Speaker, is doon kung ma-approve yung Bangsamoro Labor and Employment Code natin, so mas I think mabigyan natin ng justice ang ating overseas workers, overseas natin, domestic workers natin, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for sharing to us the various programs and the convergence that are being done with other ministries. And in fact, that gives us an idea that this problem cannot be solved alone by the MOLE. And therefore, it needs a very comprehensive framework, a comprehensive plan, and a comprehensive programs and projects that cannot be done alone by the MOLE. So in this case, Mr. Speaker, in the period of amendments, maybe I can help improve this by not saying that we do not give attention to the welfare or to the plight of the Bangsamoro domestic workers, but instead we want to help them by putting some mechanisms, framework, plan, and programs that are intended, that are focused to the plight of the domestic workers, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Ampatuan, for that questions and inquiries. Any further member any more members wish
MP Eddie Ali, Mr. Speaker.
Interpolate? The gentleman from tawi-tawi, MP Professor Eddie Ali, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to interject on the proposed resolution. The proposed resolution, Mr. Speaker, is calling for the Bangsamoro government to give attention. I just would like to mention at the outset, Mr. Speaker, even for the position of school nurses that MBHTE has for tawi-tawi. You know, there are only 10 items for school nurses. You know how many applied for the 10 items? More than 100 nurses, licensed nurses, applied for 10 positions. Ganon katindi, Mr. Speaker, ang kakulangan ng trabaho dito sa atin. Much more yung mga tao na walang lisensya to be employed. Even those with license cannot even find employment. See? So sa palagay ko, Mr. Speaker, itong resolution na to needs a whole government approach. Hindi lang po ng MOLE, pati na po ng ibang mga ministry natin. Kasi hindi po, kagaya ng sinabi ni Sister MP Baintan, hindi po ito marisolba or can be addressed by just the Ministry of Labor and Employment. Kailangan po ang buong gobyerno ng Bangsamoro to address this. Sinasabi ko po ito, Mr. Speaker, just to say that itong resolution na to is relevant. This resolution is kailangan maipasa para po panawagan po ito, calling for continuing attention sa mga domestic workers natin. So, sa palagay ko, Mr. Speaker, kung baga, maski pagdating po sa period ng amendment na kailangan natin i-amend to, pero I would like to speak for the authors of this resolution na ang panawagang ito, hindi lang po itong panahon, after a year, after 2 years, even after 5 years. Ang panawagang ito ay may kabuluhan. Kasi hindi po may address ang kakulangan ng trabaho dito sa atin in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. Kasi habang magtatagal, ang dami naman po mga graduates again. Every year, maraming domestic workers dito sa atin ang gustong makatrabaho. Pero ang kakulangan ng trabaho ay andoon po. Kaya ako Madam Proponent, hindi po ako co-author. If you won't mind, I would like to be co-author of this resolution. Kasi ang feeling ko, Mr. Speaker, kailangan po natin ito, ang panawagan ito. Just to remind us, not only the government, not only the ministries, but even for us in this parliament, we need to remind us from time to time anong dapat maitulong natin. Ang panawagang ito ay, Mr. Speaker, ay para makatulong sa kapwa natin naghahanap ng trabaho. Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. But let's just like to remind the body, and maybe we may, in order that we avoid sending the wrong impression, we are not saying that this work, the domestic workers, these are noble work and job. Okay? So by approving this resolution, it may have the impact that we are discouraging those who are seeking employment abroad as domestic helpers. I'd just like to remind that wala pong nakakahiya-hiya sa trabaho kinukuha nila. Majority Leader?
Mr. Speaker, I move to close the period of interpellation.
Period of debate and interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. Speaker, I move to open the period of amendment.
Period of amendment is open.
May we respectfully
Lady from
recognize
Maguindanao.
Mr. Speaker.
The good Deputy Minority Leader is recognized for amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I'm not so sure about this particular amendment because I haven't asked one question, which is the intention of this resolution, that we eventually ban the deployment of overseas domestic workers as embodied in the resolution. And if the intention is that, Mr. Speaker, it has bearing on my proposed amendment, Mr. Speaker. But nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, I try to word, based on the title, Mr. Speaker, a resolution calling for the Bangsamoro government to devise or craft I don't know if it's device or craft, no? But mas maganda ata yung craft. Craft a comprehensive policy, plans, programs, and projects for the Bangsamoro domestic workers
I think perhaps, Your Honors, maybe we can call for a suspension and then maybe compare notes, no?
Yeah.
And then resume once we already have the exact language that we want to introduce in this resolution. 1 minute session is suspended. Session resumed. We continue with the amendments of the Honorable Lady from Maguindanao, MP Ampatuan. On the title of the resolution, please proceed, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, we go to the last portion, the dispository portion. Now, therefore, be it resolved. Mr. Speaker, I want to delete the whereas that is in being flashed now, that is with strike through note, Mr. Speaker.
So you propose an amendment by deletion.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Are you amenable to that, MP Ramos?
I accept, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Secretariat, please delete the specific whereas clause mentioned by the proponent of this amendment.
Next proposed amendment, Mr. Speaker, is on the dispository or the prayer clause, Mr. Speaker. Now, therefore, be it resolved as it is hereby resolved by the Bangsamoro Transition Authority to adopt this resolution, calling on the government of the day. Oh, wait. There is a redundancy of the word adopt. To pass this resolution,
What about approve?
To approve this resolution, calling on the government of the day to adopt a whole of government approach in crafting a comprehensive policy, plans, programs, and projects for the Bangsamoro. The Bangsamoro, there will be a big letter. Domestic workers, especially women, period. Yes, Mr.
Please continue, Your Honor.
Just on that, Mr. Speaker, and I'll go to the title.
Are you amenable to that, MP Ramos?
I accept, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Please proceed, MP Ampatuan. Accepted.
May I see the last, the last portion? Serve further. Okay. Okay. On the title, a resolution calling on the government of the day to adopt a whole of the government approach in crafting a comprehensive policy, plans, programs, and projects for the Bangsamoro domestic workers, especially women, Mr. Speaker.
So, are you amenable to that, MP Ramos?
I accept, Mr. Speaker.
All right, accepted. Would that be all, MP Ampatuan?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much.
And I signify my intention to be part of this.
You would be automatically author of this measure with the amount of your amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Secretariat, please include the name of MP Bayintan Ampatuan as author of this resolution. Any more members? Any members who wish to introduce amendments? No more? Okay. There's a motion to close the period of amendments. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the period of amendments is hereby closed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we proceed to unfinished business.
Wait, we adopt.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt and approve committee proposed resolution number 170.
There's a motion to adopt the proposed resolution number 170 as amended. Any objection?
Subject to style, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry?
Subject to style.
Yes, as amended. Yes. Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 170 is hereby adopted. Congratulations to the author and to MP Ampatuan and MP Ramos.
Mr. Speaker, we proceed to unfinished business proposed resolution number 675. The parliamentary status of this proposed resolution, Mr. Speaker, we are on the period of amendment.
The period of amendment is hereby open. May we request the proponent of this measure to please take the rostrum?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, may I be...
Yes, please proceed, MP Saliga.
In regards to that resolution, Mr. Speaker, because there are a lot of comments in our yesterday's deliberation, we have a consolidated revised version, Mr. Speaker, that I want to present in this August body as part of the interpellation, Mr. Speaker.
So I have here, Your Honor, Majority Leader, a copy of resolution numbering 675 which I believe is a improved version of the resolution that we discussed yesterday. If you compare, Your Honors, the content of the resolution with that of the original draft of yesterday's resolution that was discussed, there has a substantial difference. So I would like to ask the Majority Leader on how do we treat this. This, to me, is a substitute resolution, including that of the title. So I'd like to seek the Majority Leader's interpretation on this. Do we continue the period of amendment or do we accept the prayer of the proponent that this resolution be discussed and replaced instead of the one that is flashed on the monitor? As an improved version.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, as far as this honorable humble representation is concerned, Mr. Speaker, the amendments, the new contents of this proposed resolution, Mr. Speaker, is the result of the interpellation and debate yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that was now incorporated on this proposed resolution, Mr. Speaker. By this, Mr. Speaker, if this august body would like to...
With due respect, Majority Leader, but the numbering of these two resolutions are different. The one that I have in my right hand, the previous resolution is PR 678, whereas this one is 675. So meaning to say these are two separate resolutions.
If I may...
Session suspended.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, may I be allowed?
Session resumed. Yes, MP Saliga.
Yes, just another correction, Mr. Speaker, on the numbering, because I think it's a part of the typographical error, because the original number really is 678, not 675. So I may stand corrected, Mr. Speaker. For this
yes. Apparently there was a mistake in the numbering, but at any rate, we will continue the discussion on this proposed resolution so that we can finish this session. The earlier, the better. Majority Leader, is there any proposed amendment to the resolution? The gentleman from Tawi-Tawi, MP Amir Bahal Mawalil, would you like to introduce an amendment to this resolution?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I have listed, I believe that it has already been flashed on the screen. I have listed a number of amendments just to fast track everything, but I will read only the title, the proposed title that we would like to replace in exchange of the original title. So this resolution will read as a resolution expressing serious concern the reported civilian casualties, including women and children, and joining the international call to immediately end the war in Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, I move that along with the title and the other listed amendments be accepted by the proponent as an amendment to the original resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Saliga.
I accept that, Mr. Speaker.
In toto, everything that was flashed in the
Yes,
monitor.
yes.
In toto.
Yes,
Alright.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we terminate the period of amendment.
Yeah, but before, yes, what's the pleasure of the gentleman from Maguindanao, MP Alisanki?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It will be recalled that yesterday I made some observations, and since after that observation, corrective measures were made, and that correspondingly, I would like to be a co-sponsor as now rewarded with some clarificatory statement on why I am wishing to become one of the co-sponsors. Because under this whereas provision, it made mention, whereas Section 8, Article 4 of the Bangsamoro Organic Law provides that the Bangsamoro government respects and adheres to all international treaties and agreements binding upon the national government, with a very strong emphasis, Mr. Speaker, that the government respects and adheres to all international treaties and agreements binding upon the national government. And with this emphasis or point, I would like to be co-sponsor because this provision embraces other rights of indigenous people in this part of the country. So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that I be included, if the proponent will allow it, that I'll be one of the co-sponsors with emphasis on this Section 8, Article 4 of the BOL, adheres to all international treaties and agreements binding upon the national government. And so, Mr. Speaker, I wish to be
Is that an amendment, Your Honor?
No, not an amendment. It's just to re-emphasize a point because earlier, in the past, I made some observation which correspondingly that observation was incorporated now with this sort of amendment.
Thank you. Yes, we do accept.
Yes,
MP
Mr.
Sanki.
Speaker, I gladly accept that, and also want to express that MP Mujahid, he also want to co-author as part of this bill, Mr. Speaker.
MP Mujahid's name was already
resolution.
there.
Yes.
So MP Sanki, Ali Sanki, please include his name.
And MP Mujahid, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the Deputy Speaker, gentleman from Cotabato City, MP Sema is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, in view of the principle, the Section 2 of the Section 2, Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution, which states that the Philippines renounces war as an instrument of national policy, adopts the general accepted principles of international law as a part of the law of the land, and adheres to the policy of peace, equality, justice, freedom, cooperation, and amity with all nations. Mr. Speaker, I would like, was the period of amendment already completed?
Yes, we're still under the period of amendment, Your Honor.
Close na ba?
Hindi pa.
I would like that to be written in this resolution, Mr. Speaker. It will be subject to style, Mr. Speaker. That provision of the Constitution be written in the proposed resolution.
Yes, which can you
And
say?
I would like to be a co-author to this resolution, Your Honor.
Do you accept? Yes, I think MP Saliga is amenable to accept MP Sema as one of the co-authors. And may we request the Deputy Speaker to please cite to us the exact provision in the Constitution so that we can include that in the body of the resolution.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would like that to be the first whereas clause, Mr. Speaker, Section 2, Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution.
Thank you, Your Honor. Secretariat, please Google the exact language under Article 2, Section 2 of the 1987 Constitution, Philippine Constitution. As one of include that as one whereas separate one whereas clause. Yes, MP Baintan.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, just on the title and on the prayer clause, Mr. Speaker, I want to put emphasis on the vulnerable sector, which are women and children. And therefore, my proposed amendment, Mr. Speaker, is to replace the word including with the word especially.
In the title.
Yes,
Your Honor.
Mr. Speaker, especially, not including.
MP Saliga, do you accept?
It is a prayer.
Yes, accepted, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. The same word to replace including with especially should also reflect in the dispositive portion of the resolution.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Secretariat, please take
Sir.
note. Anyway,
Subject
while
to
they are
style, subject
typing
to style, Mr.
the
Speaker.
proposed amendments and that's been accepted, any members would like to introduce additional amendments before we close the period of amendment?
Mr. Speaker, I move to close the period of amendment.
Yes, MP Udja, gentleman from Sulu. Do you have further amendments or
Thank
manifestation?
you. Just a further amendment to include especially women, children, and senior citizens.
They're already the word women is already there, MP Udja, and the children. Would you like to include the senior citizen?
Senior citizen can also be women.
Yes, they can also be women. And I don't think, I'm not so sure how they refer their elderly citizen in Ukraine, because we may have different terminologies in referring to elderly people here in the country. So maybe, MP Uja, with all due respect, maybe it's better that we leave the title as it is.
Okay, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr.
Majority
Speaker.
Leader. There's a motion to close the period of amendment.
Yes, I think MP.
Who?
MP Abdullah Hashim, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, the gentleman from Pagalungan, MP Hashim, is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick. During the interpellation yesterday, I gave a suggestion, and it has already been added. So I don't need to have any amendments this day, but rather I would just thank the proponents that they have added my suggestion of revising the title and not saying Ukrainian civilian casualties, but making it general, as there are many many who are involved or affected by the conflict, including the migrants. And then to that, I would also ask to be a co-author of this resolution if the proponent allows. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So, Your Honor, MP Hashim, would you want to again reformulate the title?
No, Mr. Speaker.
No need, Mr. Speaker. I am already satisfied with the formulation. It is within my intent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Your Honor. MP Saliga?
Yes, thank you very much, my colleague MP Hashim, for that good remarks and support to our resolutions, especially that your point really is, we included it in the revised version, to refer to civilian as they are the most affected in this.
Thank you, Your
Yes,
Honor.
Mr. Speaker.
There's a motion to close the period of amendment. It has been seconded, no objection. The period of amendment is hereby closed.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the approval of the proposed resolution number 678, Mr. Speaker.
The motion to adopt proposed resolution number 675 as amended. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, proposed resolution number 6 7.5 as amendment is hereby adopted. Congratulations,
Speaker,
MP Saliga.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are now on the business for the day. There is an omnibus motion, Mr. Speaker, to dispense with the period of interpellation and debate and the period of amendment, and I further move for the approval of proposed resolution number 688, Mr. Speaker.
Before we act on the motion, earlier MP Abdullah Hashim signified his intention to be a co-author of one of the resolution that is now under consideration. I think the other resolution
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
introduced by Minister Silungan. Yes, please include his name as co-authors.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
So there's a omnibus motion to adopt proposed resolution number 688, 697, dispensing with the period of amendment and the period of debate. Is there any objection to the omnibus motion? Hearing none, 688 and PR 688 and 697 are hereby adopted.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. There being no other agenda or business, Mr. Speaker, I move for adjournment of this session until next week, Tuesday, Mr. Speaker.
Before the adjournment of the session, I would like to offer today's session to the martyrs in Javida, whose martyrdom commemorates with the celebration of the Bangsamoro Day on March 18, 2022. Session is suspended until Shaʻban, the 19th day of Shaʻban, 1443, corresponding to March 22, 2022.
Mr. Speaker, adjourn. Let's suspend.
Is adjourned. Barakatuh.